Behind the iconic persona of John Wayne, the ultimate symbol of American masculinity and rugged individualism, existed a man whose private judgments were as unyielding as the heroes he portrayed on screen. He was a box office titan and an Oscar-winning legend, yet beneath that composed and commanding public facade, Wayne harbored deep-seated resentments that shaped his career in ways the audience never saw. According to those who worked closely with him, the Duke maintained an unshakable private blacklist. Some actors found themselves permanently barred from his sets after a single disagreement, while others he actively worked behind the scenes to exclude from any project bearing his name. The true fascination lies in how masterfully he concealed these vendettas, always appearing the consummate professional. This raises the compelling question that echoed through Hollywood's inner circles. Who were the 7 actors that earned a place on John Wayne's secret blacklist? The first and perhaps most artistically charged feud was with Montgomery Clift, a clash that represented a fundamental war for the soul of American acting. Their collaboration on the 1948 film Red River was so disastrous it has become the stuff of Hollywood legend. This was not a simple disagreement over creative differences. It was a profound ideological battle over how American masculinity should be portrayed. Wayne embodied a straightforward, action-oriented heroism, while Clift represented the new wave of psychological depth and vulnerability. Tensions ignited before filming even began, with Wayne openly questioning whether Clift looked capable of working cattle. To which Clift sharply retorted that his job was to act like he could. On set, Clift's constant questioning of motivations and requests for script changes pushed Wayne to his limit. The breaking point came during a key scene where Wayne famously exploded, shouting that it was a Western, not a visit to a psychiatrist. That single outburst cemented a lifelong hatred. What truly pushed Wayne over the edge was the threatening realization that Clift's performance was undeniably brilliant. The subtle intensity and emotional depth Clift brought to the screen forced a momentary doubt in Wayne's own methods, a doubt he quickly suppressed by doubling down on his own style. He later dismissed Clift's approach as therapy on camera. And from that moment on, he refused roles demanding such complexity and actively opposed directors who favored method actors. Their clash marked a symbolic fracture in Hollywood, signaling the industry's gradual shift away from the unambiguous heroism Wayne represented. If Clift threatened Wayne artistically, Kirk Douglas challenged him ideologically. The tension between them was profoundly political, embodying 2 completely different visions of America. This hostility crystallized during the Hollywood blacklist era. Douglas took a courageous and radical stand by publicly hiring and crediting blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo for Spartacus. Wayne, a staunch supporter of the anti-communist crusade, viewed this act as a deep betrayal. This feud of ideals reached its peak when both were considered for the lead in The Alamo, a project deeply personal to Wayne. He delivered an ultimatum to the studio. Either Douglas was out or he was, especially since it was his own money financing the picture. Wayne proactively produced the film to ensure Douglas had no involvement whatsoever. Their animosity extended for years, with at least 3 major westerns being rewritten or recast because the 2 giants refused to share the screen. What began as a political disagreement had evolved into a bitter personal vendetta, a battle for the very soul of the nation, fought through the medium of film. Marlon Brando inspired a different kind of hatred in Wayne, one reserved for a revolutionary he never even worked with. Brando embodied everything Wayne despised about the new Hollywood: his mumbling delivery, his defiance of studio authority, his radical politics, and his wholehearted embrace of method acting. The conflict simmered for years but reached its tipping point in 1973 at the Academy Awards. In a stunning act of protest against Hollywood's portrayal of Native Americans, Brando sent activist Sachin Littlefeather to refuse his Oscar for The Godfather. For Wayne, whose stardom was built on the Western genre, this was a direct and unforgivable attack. Reports from that night suggest Wayne was so enraged backstage he had to be physically restrained. Their mutual contempt was deeply symbolic. Brando famously called Wayne a perfect example of everything wrong with America. Both men understood they were avatars for competing visions of masculinity and storytelling. Their clash was a microcosm of the growing cultural divide that was reshaping the industry, a Cold War between two different Americas that ensured they would never collaborate. The rivalry with Clark Gable was a classic, hidden battle of alpha males, a high-stakes territorial dispute between two of Hollywood's biggest stars. In the early years, Gable reigned as established royalty, while Wayne was still struggling in B-westerns, repeatedly auditioning for roles that ultimately went to Gable. This fueled a simmering professional jealousy. The animosity intensified dramatically during World War II. Gable passed draft age, enlisted and flew combat missions, becoming a public hero. Wayne, who remained in Hollywood due to a family deferment and studio pressure, was constantly dogged by reporters questioning why he wasn't in uniform like Gable. This comparison touched a nerve of deep-seated guilt for Wayne and permanently aggravated their relationship. This silent rivalry shaped their career choices, culminating when both were considered for the same role in Mogambo. Wayne issued a him or me ultimatum to director John Ford. Ford cast Gable, but the divide was permanent. The final chapter of their tense history came with Gable's death after performing his own stunts in The Misfits. Upon hearing the news, Wayne confided to a friend that the business kills everyone in the end, even kings. In a gesture of respect for a fellow survivor of the Hollywood system, Wayne attended Gable's funeral, acknowledging a rival he never liked but ultimately could not disregard. Wayne's disdain for Gene Hackman represented a generational schism, the old Hollywood colliding with the new, grittier realism of the 1970s. Wayne saw Hackman as the embodiment of everything that threatened the clear-cut screen heroics he had built his career upon. Hackman's anti-heroes, filled with moral ambiguity, directly challenged Wayne's worldview. This animosity peaked with The French Connection, where Hackman's morally compromised detective Popeye Doyle won an Oscar and redefined the very concept of a screen hero. Wayne reportedly walked out of a screening, bluntly stating that was not a hero. The tension became deeply personal during pre-production for The Train Robbers, when Wayne learned Hackman was being considered for a role. He contacted the producers directly with an ultimatum, declaring he would not have his audiences confused by Hackman's approach to acting. This was more than a personal preference. It symbolized the shifting tastes of a nation grappling with Vietnam and Watergate, where flawed, complex characters resonated more than mythic, straightforward heroes. Perhaps the most professionally defining animosity of Wayne's later career was his intense dislike for Robert Duvall. This was a philosophical war over the soul of the Western itself. Wayne played Western heroes. Duvall became them. Their conflict began during pre-production for True Grit, where Duvall's intense, methodical preparation, reportedly living with Texas Rangers to master their mannerisms, clashed with Wayne's more archetypal approach. Wayne personally vetoed Duvall's casting, dismissing the immersive research as unnecessary for a movie. After Wayne's death, Duvall critiqued Wayne's westerns as inauthentic, underscoring their fundamental clash. Wayne's heroes were mythic symbols, while Duvall's were rooted in historical accuracy and regional authenticity. Wayne sensed the threat Duvall represented, that the Western could evolve beyond the traditions he had spent a lifetime defining. The most symbolically charged of Wayne's hatreds was reserved for Clint Eastwood, the man destined to inherit his mantle as America's Western icon. Wayne viewed Eastwood not as a successor, but as a deviation. Eastwood's gritty, morally ambiguous anti-heroes in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy were everything Wayne found offensive, undermining the virtue and clarity he championed. When Eastwood sent Wayne the script for High Plains Drifter as a potential collaboration, Wayne returned it with a scathing note, saying he would rather die than help destroy the Western genre. He reportedly confronted Eastwood at an event, criticizing his shadow of a man persona and insisting a Western hero must represent something unequivocally good. Ironically, Eastwood would later transform the genre with films like Unforgiven. Achieving the creative control Wayne always sought by honoring tradition while introducing a new layer of moral complexity. To Wayne, however, this evolution felt like a betrayal, and he refused to acknowledge Eastwood as his legitimate heir, holding fast to his belief that the Western must remain a realm of mythic morality and unambiguous heroes.